When it comes to legendary actors, Michael J. Fox is a name that instantly sparks admiration, not just for his iconic roles, but for his strength, humor, and grace in the face of Parkinson's disease. Even at 64, with a legacy that already speaks volumes, Fox recently made headlines for a surprising and brutally honest revelation. There's someone he doesn't want showing up at his funeral. Who could it be, and why? As it turns out, the story goes far deeper than a single joke or headline. Michael J. Fox has been making people laugh and feel deeply for more than 4 decades. From the moment he burst onto television screens as Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties, there was something unmistakably special about him. He wasn't just another attractive face in Hollywood. He had impeccable timing, natural charm, and that rare quality that made audiences feel like they knew him personally, like he could be your friend. Your brother, or the cool, likable guy from high school everyone remembered fondly? Born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada on June 9, 1961. Fox didn't grow up with any guarantees of stardom. He was the son of a career military man, which meant his family moved frequently. He grew up bouncing between Canadian towns, rarely staying long enough to put down roots. Always being the new kid may have shaped his ability to connect quickly with others. When you're constantly starting over, you learn how to read people, how to charm, how to belong. At just 15 years old, Fox dropped out of high school to pursue acting, an almost unthinkable risk for someone so young. His parents were understandably worried, but Fox was certain. He moved to Los Angeles with little money, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and using a phone book as a pillow. He survived on cheap food, endless optimism, and sheer determination, taking whatever small roles he could get and enduring years of rejection. Everything changed in 1982, when he landed Family Ties. Overnight, Michael J. Fox became a household name. But it was Back to the Future that made him immortal. Ironically, he almost didn't get the role of Marty McFly. Eric Stoltz was originally cast, and several weeks of filming were completed before producers realized it wasn't working. Fox was brought in while still filming Family Ties, forcing him into a grueling scheduled sitcom during the day, movie at night, sleeping only a few hours between sets. When the film was released in 1985, it became the highest-grossing movie of the year and launched Fox into SUPA's territory. Suddenly, he was everywhere: magazine covers, talk shows, award ceremonies. He had 2 hit films in theaters at the same time with Back to the Future and Teen Wolf. He followed with a string of successful projects and proved he could handle comedy, drama, romance, and science fiction. By the end of the 1980s, Fox had it all: fame, success, youth, and seemingly limitless potential. Then life intervened. In 1991, at just 29 years old, Fox noticed a slight twitch in his left pinky finger. At first, he blamed stress and exhaustion, but the symptoms worsened. After multiple medical opinions, he received a devastating diagnosis: young-onset Parkinson's disease. It was progressive, incurable, and would gradually rob him of motor control. The shock sent him into a deep emotional spiral. He drank heavily to cope with fear, anger, and grief. Even as he continued working and hiding his symptoms from the public, for 7 years Fox kept his diagnosis private, developing techniques to conceal tremors on camera and timing his medication around filming schedules. In many ways, it was the hardest role of his career. During this time, his wife, Tracy Pollan, whom he married in 1988 after meeting on Family Ties, stood by him unwaveringly. Together they raised 4 children. And Fox has often said his family gave him the strength to keep going. In 1998, Fox went public with his diagnosis. Instead of rejection, he was met with overwhelming support. He stepped away from Spin City in 2000, later making guest appearances on various shows and proving that Parkinson's hadn't taken away his talent or presence. He also turned his focus toward advocacy, founding the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, which has since raised over $1.5 billion and become the largest nonprofit funder of Parkinson's research in the world. Over the years, Fox has endured surgeries, injuries from falls, and countless setbacks. He's had to give up simple pleasures like playing guitar or typing icily. Yet his sense of humor and optimism remain intact. He's written candid, often funny books about living with illness and mortality, offering insight into how he balances realism with hope. As Fox has grown older, he's become more open about death and what he wants for his funeral. True to his personality, he approaches the topic with dark humor. He's joked about not wanting certain Hollywood personalities in attendance, not out of spite, but because he fears they might turn a quiet goodbye into a spectacle. Johnny Depp and George Clooney have come up jokingly, with Fox imagining their larger-than-life presence overshadowing the intimacy he desires. These remarks are made affectionately, underscoring his wish for simplicity rather than drama at the heart of it all. Fox wants his final goodbye to reflect the values he's come to cherish: peace, sincerity, and closeness. He doesn't want a Hollywood production or performative grief. He wants his wife, his children, true friends, and the people who walked beside him in the fight against Parkinson's after decades in the public eye. He wants something deeply personal and quiet as Michael J. Fox enters what he calls the back nine of his life. He continues to inspire through resilience, humor, and honesty. Death to him isn't an enemy, it's simply the final chapter of a long journey. And it's one he's faced with the same courage and grace that have defined his life. Fox has also spoken candidly about how living with Parkinson's has reshaped his understanding of time. When you're diagnosed young with a progressive disease, the future stops being an abstract idea and becomes something very real, very fragile. He no longer thinks in decades the way he once did. Instead, he thinks in moments. Good days, good hours, good conversations, a laugh shared with his wife, a call from one of his kids, a quiet morning when his body cooperates just enough to let him feel normal. Those moments, he says, are everything. As the disease has progressed, Fox has had to accept limitations that once would have seemed unimaginable to him. He has talked openly about falling often, sometimes badly. Broken bones, bruises, stitches, these are not rare events in his life now. Each fall carries a reminder that his body no longer obeys him the way it once did. Yet even here, he refuses to frame himself as a victim. He jokes about it, sometimes darkly, sometimes self-deprecatingly, because humor has always been his armor. If he can laugh at it, it can't fully defeat him. His relationship with Tracy Pollan remains one of the most enduring love stories in Hollywood, precisely because it has not been built on glamour. It has been built on endurance. Fox has said many times that he would not have survived the early years of his diagnosis without her. When his drinking was at its worst, when fear made him distant and irritable, not because she had to, but because she chose to. He has described her as his moral compass, his anchor, the person who keeps him honest when optimism alone isn't enough. Their children have grown up watching their father fight a disease most people associate with old age. For Fox, this has been both heartbreaking and motivating. He didn't want his kids to remember him as fragile or defeated. He wanted them to see effort, persistence, humor in the face of difficulty. He wanted to show them that even when life deals you a brutal hand, how you play it still matters. In interviews, Fox has admitted that one of his greatest fears was not dying but becoming a burden. Over time, he's learned to let that fear go, accepting help not as weakness, but as another form of love. Professionally, Fox reached a point where acting itself became physically exhausting. Memorizing lines grew harder. The precision required for performance clashed with a body that refused consistency. Eventually, he made the difficult decision to step away almost entirely. For someone whose identity had been built around performance since his teenage years, this was no small thing. Acting wasn't just a job. It was how he communicated with the world. Letting go felt like losing a part of himself. But stepping back also gave him space. Space to reflect. Space to advocate. Space to focus on what he believes may outlast any film or television role, the work of his foundation. Fox has said that if the Michael J. Fox Foundation contributes in even a small way to easing suffering or accelerating a cure, then everything he's endured will feel worth it. That belief fuels him on days when his body doesn't. The Foundation's work is deeply personal. Fox doesn't just raise money. He understands the science. He challenges researchers, asks uncomfortable questions, and pushes for urgency. He knows time is not a luxury for people living with Parkinson's. Every delay means more lives complicated, more independence lost. That urgency is what has made the Foundation so effective. It is driven not by abstract compassion but by lived reality. As he's aged, Fox has also become more philosophical. He has spoken about optimism not as blind positivity, but as a conscious choice. For him, optimism doesn't mean pretending things are fine. It means acknowledging how bad things can be while still choosing to believe in meaning. In one of his books, he wrote that optimism is sustainable when it's grounded in truth. His condition will continue to progress, accepting that reality has paradoxically made him calmer, less afraid. This acceptance is what shapes his thoughts about death. Fox does not romanticize dying, nor does he obsess over it. He treats it as an inevitable endpoint, one that deserves honesty rather than denial. He has joked that he doesn't fear being dead. He fears the process of getting there: pain, loss of dignity, prolonged suffering. If he had a choice, he'd prefer a quiet exit, no drawn-out decline, no spectacle, no burden on those he loves. That desire for simplicity carries directly into how he imagines his funeral. He wants no performance, no industry politics, no obligatory appearances by people who barely knew him. He doesn't want headlines about who attended or what they wore. He wants a room filled only with people who shared real moments with him. People who knew him when the cameras were off. People who saw the tremors, the frustration, the exhaustion and stayed anyway. In this way, the jokes about uninvited guests reveal something deeply sincere. They are not about exclusion for its own sake. They are about boundaries. After a lifetime of public consumption, Fox wants one thing that belongs only to him and the people he loves. A goodbye that isn't curated, photographed, or monetized. What makes Fox's story resonate so deeply is not just his fame or talent, but his transparency. He has never pretended to be a hero. He talks about fear, about anger, about moments when optimism failed him, about nights when the future felt unbearable. And yet, he kept going. Not because he was fearless, but because stopping wasn't an option. As he continues to make occasional public appearances, people often comment on how frail he looks compared to the energetic young man of the 1980s. Fox has acknowledged this too. He knows the contrast is stark. But he also knows that strength doesn't always look like vitality. Sometimes it looks like persistence. Sometimes it looks like showing up even when it's hard. Sometimes it looks like speaking honestly about decline in a culture obsessed with youth and denial. In recent years, Fox has spoken more about gratitude than ambition. He's grateful for the career he had, for the family he built, for the chance to turn personal suffering into collective action. He doesn't measure his life by box office numbers or awards anymore. He measures it by impact, by relationships, by whether his story has helped someone else feel less alone. If there is one thing Michael J. Fox hopes people remember about him, it's not Marty McFly or Alex P. Keaton, as iconic as those characters are. He hopes they remember that he tried, that when life pushed back, he pushed forward, that he used what he had: fame, humor, honesty, to make something better than what he found. And when the time finally comes, whenever that may be, he wants the noise to fade. No spectacle. No distractions. Just a quiet acknowledgement of a life fully lived, imperfectly but bravely. A man who faced an unfair diagnosis and refused to let it define the limits of his humanity. A final moment of peace, surrounded by love, free from performance at last. Even now, Fox understands that his presence in the world is changing. He speaks less, appears less, and moves more carefully. But what he says carries more weight than ever. When he talks about living with Parkinson's, people listen not because he's famous, but because he's honest. He doesn't sugarcoat the struggle, and he doesn't sell false hope. He talks about reality, about adaptation, about redefining what a meaningful life looks like when your body no longer cooperates. One of the hardest lessons Fox has had to learn is how to slow down mentally while everything else slows down physically. In his younger years, his mind raced ahead of his body, full of plans, projects, and ambitions. Parkinson's forced him to recalibrate, to accept that not every day would be productive in the traditional sense. That rest is not laziness. That doing less does not mean being less. This shift didn't come easily. For someone wired to perform, to achieve, to move forward constantly, stillness felt like surrender. Over time, he learned it could also be peace. Fox has talked about grief, not just grief for what he might lose in the future, but grief for the life he thought he'd have. The long career. The endless roles. the freedom of movement most people take for granted. Grief, he says, doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Some days it's sharp and immediate. Other days it's quiet, almost background noise. Learning to live with it rather than fight it has been part of his survival. Despite everything, Fox remains deeply engaged with the world. He follows research developments closely. He mentors younger advocates. He encourages newly diagnosed patients to ask questions, to stay curious, to hold on to agency even when control feels elusive. He reminds them that Parkinson's affects the body, not the worth of the person living inside it. That message, repeated again and again, has become one of his most lasting contributions. He's also candid about fear. Fear hasn't vanished from his life. It shows up in unexpected ways during a bad fall, during a sleepless night, during a moment when his speech won't cooperate. But fear no longer runs the show. Experience has taught him that panic wastes energy he can't afford to lose. Acceptance, while not easy, is more efficient. It allows him to conserve strength for what matters. Fox's humor, though darker now, remains intact. He still cracks jokes about his condition, about aging, about mortality. Not to minimize them, but to disarm them. Laughter for him is not denial. It's defiance. A way of saying, you can take my balance, my speed, my steadiness, but you don't get my spirit. As conversations about his funeral circulate, Fox seems almost amused by the attention. The irony is not lost on him. People are fascinated by who he doesn't want there rather than why. But if you listen closely, the reason is clear. He wants authenticity. He wants truth. He wants the end of his life to look nothing like the manufactured moments that dominate celebrity culture. He has spent years being watched, analyzed, photographed, speculated about. His illness, once private, became public property. His tremors, his falls, his slower gait are discussed openly by strangers. For someone who has lived under that microscope, privacy becomes sacred. His funeral in his mind is the final boundary, the last moment that belongs only to those who earned it. Fox has also spoken about legacy, though not in grand terms. He doesn't talk about statues or awards or immortal status. He talks about easing suffering, about accelerating research, about making life better for someone he'll never meet. That, to him, is legacy. If the foundation continues its work after he's gone, if treatments improve, if diagnoses become less terrifying because there are more options, then he'll feel he's done enough. There's a quiet courage in the way Fox discusses the future. He doesn't pretend to know how much time he has left. He doesn't make bold declarations about fighting until the end. He simply says he'll do what he can for as long as he can, and when he can't, he'll let go. That honesty is rare in a culture obsessed with control and longevity at any cost. In many ways, Michael J. Fox has already rewritten what it means to age in public. He has shown that decline doesn't erase dignity, that vulnerability doesn't cancel strength, and that meaning doesn't disappear when the spotlight fades. His life is no longer defined by momentum, but by intention. When people think about him years from now, long after the headlines have moved on, it won't be the jokes about funeral guest lists that linger. It will be the image of a man who faced a relentless disease and refused to become bitter. A man who transformed personal loss into collective progress. A man who understood that life's value isn't measured by how long you stay standing, but by what you do while you're here. And when that final day comes, if it comes quietly as he hopes, it will not be an ending marked by noise or spectacle. It'll be the closing of a story already rich with meaning. A story of resilience, love, humor, and hard-earned wisdom. A life that mattered not because it was famous, because it was lived with honesty until the very end. In the end, Michael J. Fox's story is not really about Parkinson's fame or even mortality. It's about how a person chooses to live when life refuses to follow the script. It's about adjusting your expectations without surrendering your values. It's about finding purpose when the spotlight dims and meaning when control slips away. Fox never asked to be an inspiration. He became one by refusing to disappear. He stayed present in his life, in his marriage, in his children's lives, and in a cause far bigger than himself. He allowed the world to see him as he truly is, imperfect, struggling, hopeful, afraid, and still moving forward in the only ways he can. When people talk about his funeral or his final wishes, what they're really responding to is his clarity. He knows what matters and what doesn't. Applause doesn't matter. Attention doesn't matter. Appearances don't matter. Love does, truth does. Peace does. And so, when the time comes, there will be no need for grand speeches or dramatic moments. His life has already said enough. A quiet goodbye will be more than sufficient for a man who spent decades giving the world laughter, honesty, and courage. Michael J. Fox will not be remembered for how he left this world, but for how he stayed in it fully, bravely, and with humor long after most people would have given up.